glorious this morning to gather as one congregation. Together we have moved through the season of gratitude. We have heard powerful, beautiful voices from our community who are witnesses to God's generosity and challenges to us to be abundant, extravagant givers with our lives. And this morning we're very honored and privileged to invite to the pulpit Jen Tolbert, our new head of school. We're so glad you're here.
I understand that you have been focused on the season of gratitude with a particular focus on stewardship. And so it is in this spirit that I share with you a bit about my own life and what I've come to understand about stewardship. If you can use anything, Lord, you can use me. If you can use anything, Lord, you can use me. Take my hands, Lord, and my feet. Take my heart, Lord, speak through me. If you can use anything, Lord, you can use me. How can we be of use? This is the central question that I believe gets to the heart of why we are all here. Well, it seems so simple, it can be so difficult at the same time, because ultimately to be of service to God means that we need to make sacrifices, set aside our own needs, and do what God has called us to do. Ultimately, we are called to be good stewards of what God has given us. As an English major in college, I discovered I had a love for words. I was one of the few among my classmates who enjoyed studying etymology, or the history of words. And so in preparing for this talk on stewardship, of course, I looked up the definition. According to Webster's dictionary, stewardship is protecting and being responsible for something, or the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. If we take a deeper look into the Bible, we can find an expanded understanding of stewardship. In Psalms 24:1, it reads, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." Essentially, the Bible says that everything we have belongs to God. And so our job is to manage or steward what we have, to glorify God and to be of service to one another. There are three core areas in which we are called to serve and to steward that which has been entrusted to us, namely our time, our talent, and our treasure. Time. I come from a small town in New Hampshire, about 20 minutes north of Concord. I'm one of 4 children and grew up in a household where I gained a foundational understanding of what it means to be of service to others and what it means to give of your time for the greater good. It started in our home. First and foremost, my parents believed in chores. It was a core value in our family that everyone play a role in keeping the household running. There was no debating, arguing, ditching, or whining. We stacked wood so that we could heat our home in the winter. We mowed the lawn, painted fences, fed animals, pulled weeds from our garden, helped with cleaning, made our beds, and washed dishes, among other things. In fact, my parents didn't have an automatic dishwasher until about 5 years ago. I first learned how to give back to my own family, and I learned that it was our job to take care of one another. Then there was the wider town community. My mother was very involved. She ran the Sunday school, organized church dinners, led the youth group, and was very present in our school. You may know some parents like this. Of course, her involvement meant that we were involved, setting up and breaking down tables for various events, selling candles to raise money for something, and waiting tables at church dinners. My mother had a passion for the homeless and the hungry, and so we took up that cause too. As ornery teenagers, we didn't understand why our mother was forcing us to participate. After all, we had places to go and important things to do, like hang out with our friends. It wasn't until I was in high school that I began to understand. I remember that my mother had organized Thanksgiving baskets for those in need, and she asked me to help her go down to the church and assemble the baskets and distribute them to those who otherwise would not have had a Thanksgiving dinner. We put the baskets together and people came to pick them up. In my young, naive, and uninformed mind, I expected a stereotypical homeless person to show up. I quickly realized how wrong I was. I saw families, moms and dads with little children coming through the line, and I realized that I knew most of them. They were my classmates, my friends, people in my church whom I had known for years, people who had fallen on hard times, people who had lost a job, people who had lost a wage-earning spouse to illness. Their stories were varied, and all of them heart-wrenching. The least I could do was give up my time. My mother leaned over and said something I would hear her say many times throughout my life. Everyone has a story. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, and we are all responsible for one another. And so now, many years later, I understand that our responsibility begins in our household and extends to our community and our world. How do we care for those entrusted to us? Our children, our families, our community members, people around the globe. God calls us to serve one another, and giving of our time is essential in doing that. Today we are talking about stewardship, and this morning I invite us to think about how we are stewarding our time. In what ways are we using our time to make the world a better place? How are we reaching out to those around us? How are we mentoring and pouring into the lives of others? How are we supporting our families and the communities in which we are a part? Talent. What I love about people is that we have so many similarities, and yet we are uniquely different. I have enjoyed watching this art installation emerge over the past several weeks and reading about the gifts and talents in this community. And I feel blessed to have watched that come together. I spoke in our chapel at St. Mark's a few weeks back and invited the students to look at their hand and notice their own fingerprints. As they studied their index fingers, we talked about how no one else in the entire world has that fingerprint, and that God made each of us to be uniquely different with our own gifts and talents. And so there is no reason to waste time trying to be somebody else, because there is only one you. I love working in schools because I get to be a part of shaping young people's lives and helping children discover their gifts and talents. It is like mining for diamonds, trying to uncover the gem that resides within each child. At St. Mark's, we work to expose children to as much as we can, with the hope that along the way, they will discover a bit about who they are, what they're good at, what they're not so good at, and what they're passionate about. Watching this process and journey unfold is a blessing, and I'm honored and humbled to be a part of it. It is important to help our children discover their gifts, and it is also our responsibility to teach children and ourselves how to be good stewards of our talents. How do we use our gifts to enrich the lives of others? How do we use our talents to glorify God? I started my career thinking I wanted to be a dentist. I know that's hard to believe, especially for those of you who know how skittish I am around blood and needles. My husband is nodding. And so when I was doing an internship with a family friend and passed out at the site of administering some Novocaine, I realized that this dentist thing was not going to be my gift to the world. However, I did discover that I really enjoyed kids. From beginning my babysitting career at age 11 to teaching swimming lessons and tutoring my siblings, I discovered that I was good at helping others learn. One of my college professors urged me to volunteer in a classroom, and I found that I was good at teaching reading and writing, and that I enjoyed setting a classroom climate where we could wrestle with ideas and debate from different points of view. This led to my being an English teacher. I had a particular gift and compassion for middle school students who weren't trying to hear anything from anybody and whom others found a little challenging at times. I enjoyed harnessing their energy and their keen ability to sniff out hypocrisy by providing a platform for them to express their ideas in writing. Early on, I learned that teachers are like superheroes. They can activate their powers to build children up with their words or to tear them down. Teachers also have tremendous power to interrupt and shape thinking. Teachers can build prejudice or empathy, a narrow perspective, or an open mind. I recently received a message on LinkedIn from one of my 7th grade English students from over 20 years ago. I had not been in contact with her since she had graduated, and out of nowhere, I had a message in my inbox. She wrote, quote, "I didn't do remarkably well in your class. I probably had a C or a D, but it didn't matter. You were still one of my favorite teachers. You believed in me, and as a result, I went on to become a writer." We never know what kind of impact we will have on another person, but God calls us to be good stewards of those people and those opportunities that come into our lives, and to use those talents or superpowers for good. And so as a teacher, I took that responsibility seriously and did my best to do a good job in the classroom. Over time, I was given more responsibility and began to lead committees and serve as a head advisor, coordinating special projects. God gave me even more to oversee, this time providing opportunity to supervise an entire middle school. God surrounded me with mentors along the way, people who took a vested interest in helping me, showing me the ropes and honing my leadership skills. Some of those people are in the room today. With all the skills and experiences and mentoring, I was given the opportunity to lead a whole school. To me, being a head of school means that you're the servant leader for the whole school community. Ultimately, it means that you sacrifice and you use your gifts and talents to serve the children. And so I'm honored to be in that position at St. Mark's, and I strive to be a good steward of all that has been entrusted to me. When we can demonstrate that we can handle a little, God will give us more responsibility. In Matthew 25:21, it reads, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities." We are born into this world for a reason, and we have to push forward to do the things that God has put in our heart to do. We are talking about stewardship this morning, and I invite us to think about how we're using our gifts and talents to enrich the lives of those around us and to glorify God and live out our purpose in the earth. Treasure. I didn't understand how important my hometown church had been in my life until my father died almost 2 years ago. The same church where I was baptized, that kept me engaged through youth group, the same church that celebrated my parents' 50th anniversary, was the same place that buried my father. It was the church ladies who came together to honor my dad's life and service to the church by hosting a beautiful reception. The church had seen my family through so many different stages of our lives. I reflected on all that the church has meant to me and my family and tried to imagine where we would be without the support of our church community. My husband and I and our children now have our own church family, and I often think about how much our lives have changed, how far we have come, and how our church community has been there for us. We give our treasure to church because we want the ministry to continue so that more people can experience God's love and purpose for their lives. God never intended for us to be alone in this world, and He's set the framework of churches to remind us of that. For some of us here today, St. Mark's Church has saved our lives. It has been a place of peace when our world has been turned upside down. It has restored our faith. It has been our family when we had no one else. This church has prayed for our healing. St. Mark's has helped celebrate our marriages and our deaths. This place has reached out to those in need, the hungry, the poor, the homeless, here in Altadena and in Haiti. In this season of gratitude, I invite you to give thanks for how far God has brought you. I invite you to think about what this place has meant to you and where you would be without it. Today we have the opportunity to use our treasure to sow into this church community. Let us be good stewards of what God has entrusted to us, St. Mark's Church, so that it can continue to do good works, make a difference in the world, and be a blessing to many more to come.